This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome back to the Fan Reporter Show, made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and my boy Andrew sitting right across from me is going to give us this week's topics.
So SB Nation put out the most recent episode of their Collapse series, and the subject of discussion was none other than our going to work crew Pistons. The week before that, it was the Red Wings. This is indicative of the current state of affairs of Detroit sports, so we're going to talk about it. But don't worry, we'll end on a lighter note by giving you our top 5 most anticipated summer movies.
Okay. Obviously we're going to start off with the sports talk a little bit, kind of referencing that SB Nation article, and then we're going to go ahead and move on into those summer movies. Kind of like how we did last week, where a little bit short on sports topics here in Detroit. Not much talk about the Tigers. I mean, unless you're really deep diving into it. Not much talk about with the Red Wings, although there is some
podcast.
Red Wings news, though. There may be a potential trade that the Wings could be looking to pull off before the season starts.
Interesting.
And it's actually a big one.
Interesting.
I did read today, or either yesterday or today, I can't remember which one, but I did read that Ken Holland, in his first move as the Edmonton Oilers GM, may be looking to bring Anthony Mantha with him from the Wings. Yes. The Ant-Man. Maybe looking to bring Anthony Mantha, and in return, the Wings will be getting Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's a pretty big-name player for Edmonton. So it's something to keep an eye on. But we don't really talk too much Red Wings. Neither of us are huge hockey fans. So we'll leave the Red Wings experts to talk about that, to break that down, talk about it. But Pistons, it's their offseason. They're hitting the golf course. I mean, not much to talk about there. Obviously, we're getting closer to the draft, and we'll start some draft breakdowns pretty shortly here.
Yeah.
Draft's only about a month and a half away. Not even.
Not less than a month away.
Less than a month away. Wow.
Yeah.
And the Lions are just in the middle of their OTA workouts. So as things ramp up with training camp, we may get some more news out of there. But as of right now,
Actually, exactly a month away.
Oh, exactly a month
20th.
away. Okay. But as of right now, we're gonna have some fun. And that fun's going to be talking about things like burgers and movies and chicken.
Which, you know what? I realized over the weekend, one of our buddies listened to our podcast, and he called me up and yelled at me that we didn't talk about this one burger spot. I'm like, they left that out of that list.
What place?
Lux.
Oh, really? You're right, yeah.
I'm like,
I didn't
Lux
think
at
about
least
it.
deserved to be mentioned on that list. Like,
Is it really considered a burger spot, though?
I guess you could say it's, but they're talking about the best burgers. Like, I guess you could say it's not exclusively a burger spot, but neither is Hopcat. So.
True. I mean, I would definitely put Lux over places like Hopcat and stuff, but I don't think Lux would have made it anywhere past the second round.
Well, Lux is one of my favorite burgers in the area.
I mean, going up against places like Miller's Bar and granted Mercury Bar, I think was the biggest omission, but in Vincetta Garage, Red Coat, Nemo's, Hunter House, place like that. Yeah, it's not going to get very far. And Green Dot also, but I really don't think it's going to get very far going up against the juggernauts like that. But no, Lux is definitely very good. If you had to put Lux against Red Coat, what would you say?
I actually lean Lux.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Not sure that I do, but fair enough.
Yeah.
Gosh, man. Oh, need some water. Here we go.
But yeah, I don't know if you guys watch this series that SB Nation does. They put out on YouTube. It's called Collapse, and it's relatively recent. I think they've only put out about 9 episodes, almost 9 to 10 episodes, something like that.
So I definitely saw the Pistons one. I didn't even know they did one on the Red Wings.
Yeah, they did one
I did not know that.
The week before that, that was a previous episode. They've done ones on like the Nets, and they don't just stick to one sport. Obviously, they did Red Wings. They do baseball ones. They go all over. But yeah, so. Detroit got the spotlight 2 weeks in a row. Not the kind of spotlight you want to get.
Not really.
So, and it's no secret here that Detroit sports kind of down in the dumps right now. But
is it really?
But
how many teams do we have rebuilding?
The collapse, like the Pistons collapse, that happened almost a decade ago. The Red Wings, if you can call it a collapse, I would call it more of a deterioration. It's been.
They did get pretty bad pretty quick.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Probably the Tigers has been a few years now. I think their last truly good opportunity was probably the 2013 team with Brad Ausmus.
Collapse.
No, I would just consider their collapse being steadily from 1957.
But in general, what needs to happen here? Does this city need to change the scenery with ownership? Like, there's a lot of teams that have been waiting a while just to get back to relevance. It looks like there's no relevance on the horizon for any teams. You can maybe argue the Lions, but the Red Wings, the Tigers still look very, very, very far from any kind of contention. The Pistons look like they're treading water and not really going anywhere with it. Is there any road to getting out of the dumps for any team in the city?
Oh, absolutely. I'm actually going to give you a little bit of an optimistic look on things, which is not normally my MO. You know me very well. When it comes to Detroit sports, being optimistic in 2019 is not my MO.
You can start pronouncing some words.
But I'm going to give you a little bit of an optimistic look. Here in Detroit, as Detroit sports fans, we're spoiled.
Yeah.
We are absolutely spoiled. Look at the city of St. Louis, for instance. Yes, they had a good run with the Cardinals, but their hockey team hasn't even been into a Stanley Cup final in like 35 years. How many Stanley Cup titles do we have in the last 35 years? 4? That's titles. Yeah. They haven't even been to a Stanley Cup final.
I mean, the late 2000s, that was like prime time Detroit sports. Like,
how long has it been since
the Tigers,
the
Red Wings, and the Pistons were all at the top of their game?
Right. And how long was it until a couple of years ago? How long was it before the Cubs won a World Series? 100 and something years? I mean, we're spoiled here. There's basketball teams who have yet to win a title, I'm pretty sure.
But is there any city that has widespread losing like we do right now? We're a 4-sport team. We're all for
a 4-sport city. We're all that's an interesting question. I really don't know, because when you look at LA, the Lakers suck. The Clippers are mediocre in rebuilding. The Kings are not very good. The Angels are not very good, but the Dodgers are on fire.
So let's. I mean, we can go through if you want. I mean, you got Miami, for example.
Miami's got the Heat. They missed the playoffs in basketball. It's pretty bad. They've Dolphins are no good, but I don't think they have. The Marlins suck, but they don't have a hockey team, as far as I know. Unless the Panthers are in Miami, I'm not entirely sure the Panthers are in Miami though. I'll tell you in a second. Sunrise, Florida, in the Miami metro area. So yeah, I mean, what did the Panthers do this year? I don't really pay attention to Florida Panthers hockey.
Whoa. This is not quite Detroit sports, but some news just broke on the podcast. Bucks are releasing Gerald McCoy.
Wow. Did he not pass his physical test because he gained too much weight or something? So the Panthers finished...
Speaking of Florida teams.
1, 2, 3... They finished 5th place in the Atlantic Division in the East. So, I mean, they missed the playoffs. They weren't very good. So, I mean, you could argue Miami's won. They're a team that doesn't have anybody any good.
How about Washington?
The Redskins, no. The Wizards, no. The Nationals are a solid team, though.
They have a hockey team, right?
Yeah, the Capitals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're worrying. They won the Stanley Cup last year. I mean, in terms of 4-sport cities, there's only a handful throughout the country.
I got one for you.
What?
Phoenix.
The Arizona Cardinals, the Phoenix Suns, both teams are garbage. The Coyotes, what did they do this year?
And then you got the Are the Diamondbacks any good?
I do actually believe the Diamondbacks are fairly good. I don't know if they will be this year, considering they traded away or they lost their best asset.
But you know what? They get warm weather, all right?
And Goldschmidt, they do get warm weather. You're not wrong. See, the Coyotes finished 4th in their division. I believe they
both teams we just named are warm weather cities. I have no sympathy.
Miami and Phoenix. But one of them, the average age is like 107. Actually, you could argue, well, not Miami. It's more like Fort Lauderdale. It's like the average age is 107. But no, I mean, sure, both those cities aren't very good for sports. You're right, at least not right now. But they also, neither of those two cities have the history of success that Detroit has in terms of sports. Neither one of them do. The Marlins have had one World Series title that I can recall, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah.
The Heat have had a few titles, yes. but I don't ever remember the Florida Panthers being that great. So, I mean, and the Dolphins haven't been good since Marino was there. But and the Phoenix has just never been good at anything.
The Phoenix Suns were decent.
The Phoenix Suns were the Phoenix Suns had the teams with Steve Nash. They always finished at the top of the standings. Then the playoffs, when half-court basketball was a thing,
those teams
they couldn't play it.
That team with Barkley, they would have won a championship there for the
if it weren't for Jordan.
Yeah, they peaked in the Jordan years.
Yeah.
So have fun with that.
Yeah, and then you had the Arizona Cardinals go to a Super Bowl one season with Fitz against the Steelers, but ended up losing that. And the Diamondbacks have won a World Series fairly recently also.
Yeah.
But
back to Detroit.
Back to Detroit, yes. We're spoiled here in Detroit. There's very few four-sport cities that have as much success as we do. Obviously, our football team is the odd one out here because it hasn't had any kind of real success since 57. Yeah. And has had zero success since 91.
In general, there's only, I believe, 6 cities that have more titles than us since 2000.
Right. I mean, that's pretty good. We're spoiled here.
You're talking Boston, Miami,
Philly.
LA.
Was Philly in there?
Philly. No, Pittsburghh is in
Pittsburgh's in there.
Not
okay.
Philly. Pittsburgh's in there. And Chicago.
And Chicago? Okay. I mean,
and San Antonio. The Spurs alone.
Wow. Good for them. Good for them. But no, I mean, there's a lot to be positive about as a Detroit sports fan. I know the younger generation hasn't seen any of gotten to see any of this winning. Well, people our age have seen plenty. We've seen the Red Wings put up 4 Stanley Cup titles. We've seen the Pistons win a title, make 4 straight Eastern Conference Finals, and go to 3 NBA, two or 3 NBA Finals, 2, right?
With the Pistons?
Yeah, 2. I mean, we've seen success. We've seen the Tigers make it to 2 World Series and make playoff appearance after playoff appearance after playoff appearance. We've seen success from 3 of our 4 sports teams with championship success in 2 of them. Detroit sports fans are spoiled, and really, I get it. Right now, it's very upsetting. Yes, that things look bleak. It looks like it's hard to find a light at the end of the tunnel here. But I'm telling you, at least for one of our teams, I can tell you there's a path. There's a pathway to a rebuild here. And honestly, another team, you could argue, is attempting to build something. With a guy who's only been a head coach in this team for a year. You've only had 1 healthy year of your superstar. And it led to a playoff appearance that, yes, you got your butts kicked. It did. But it looked like progress from the year prior. With virtually the same roster outside of a few role players that really made 0 impact. So, yes, you could argue there's some progress there. You can also say that it was hinged on that they reached their peak with absolute health, because this is one of the healthiest seasons we've seen out of some of those guys on that Pistons team. An absolute peak play from Blake Griffin in his career, and Andre Drummond in his career, and it only led to this. So you could argue that it's kind of like a dead location there. But there is a way to build on that. There is a way here. Yes, I know we're capped out, but you can always still build from the draft. I mean, guys, superstars get taken at 13, 14, 15 every year. Yeah. You can find a guy. You just got to do it. You got to trust your scouting. The scouting department and your GM and your head coach got to get on the same page. Find a guy that looks good and hope you're able to develop him into the next Kawhi Leonard.
But right now, is there a team this year you think is rebuilding right?
The closest one I would argue is the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings are by far the closest team to a rebuild. They've got a lot of good young talent on that roster. With Mantha, with Larkin, who's your future captain, with Tyler Bertuzzi, with Philip Zadina. You've got a lot of young talent on that roster, a lot of good scoring young talent on that roster. You just need to now build your defense. Get some guys along the blue line, young, a good mix of youth and vets, and build with that. Find yourself another net miner because Jimmy Howard ain't getting any younger, and build from that. You made the decision to bring in Stevie Y, who's not afraid to cut his losses when it comes to his roster. First thing he did when he got into Tampa Bay was cut the biggest star on the team. He wasn't worth his money. And then that Tampa Bay team became Stanley Cup contenders year in and year out. I wouldn't be opposed to having him come in here and do the exact same thing here. But this team is rebuilding the right way. They've built up assets, gotten things put together, developed a young group of guys, developed a young core that looks exciting, looks talented, and now continuing to build with that on a pathway to success. That's a team I can see fighting to be back in the playoffs, not this year, but next year.
I don't disagree with you. I agree with you on the fact that they are the team that is, of the four teams, their team is blown the right way. The Tigers are in theory,
the Tigers, okay,
but they're just not getting because they traded away big time assets for guys out of their farm system.
They're not getting the return on it though.
But yeah, they're not getting the type of guys that you would hope.
No. I'll tell you right now, the Tigers are kind of an enigma here because yes, they've made the moves that are necessary to make and to do a rebuild in baseball, trading away guys like JD Martinez, trading away guys like Justin Verlander and Ian Kinsler, trading those big contracts away to bring in some young assets, some prospects to build with. I'll tell you right now, the Tigers' pitching prospects look fantastic. Alex Faedo looks great in minor leagues. Casey Mize looks like an absolute future superstar in the minors. Matt Manning has really come on in Double-A ball. Either single A or Double-A. I can't remember which one he's in. They've got very good young pitching prospects, but there's nothing behind them. Nothing in terms of prospects in the field or at the plate. And I'll tell you right now, the roster they have now, you're hard-pressed to find a guy on that roster that you're going to be looking to build around in your field, in your lineup for years to come.
Yeah.
It isn't going to be Castellanos. He's on a contract year now, and the own Al Avila straight up came out and said there's no market for him. Christian Stewart looks okay. Can't stay healthy. Candelario just got sent down to the minors. I mean, what are you putting out there to hit the ball? Your pitching prospects look very nice, but you got to have some offensive and defensive weapons to make something happen, to put some runs on the board. You can't win if you don't score. You got to hit the ball. So you got to be able to find someone to play in the field and hit the ball in the lineup, and they've got nothing in their farm system to show for it.
Yeah.
Nothing. Dawel Lugo looks like a 4A player. That ain't going to be a guy that's going to be part of your big-time future. He's a future platoon guy.
Yeah.
He'll play Donnie Kelly baby type situations.
Now, and then getting on to the Lions in our team just seems like they're treading water, basically.
Can we consider them treading water?
Because they'll have like a season where they'll get 10 wins, and the next season they'll get 6 wins, and they're going to get like 8 wins.
I mean, we've been steadily pretty bad the last few years.
Yeah. But
let's be real here. We've been pretty bad the last few years.
Just in the 2018-2019 season, in terms of wins, it's the best team has actually been the Pistons in terms of win percentage.
And yet they were below 500.
But my question to you is, this season they were did they hit 500 this season? Or did they get right at? I thought they got right at 500 this season. One game below.
Pretty sure they were like 40 and 42
but
or 39 and 40 and 43 or something.
My question to you is, right at 500, 41-41.
Oh, they were. Okay. Woo!
But my question
Small
to you
victories.
is, which of our teams is the closest to being a championship contender? Well, I shouldn't say close. I should say, which of our team do you think will be the next team to be contending for a championship?
I mean, looking at it right now,
winning a championship, but just
looking at it right now, none of them. I mean, nobody's close.
That's why I rephrased it. I said the next team.
And the Red Wings are the only ones rebuilding properly. And also, when it comes to hockey, you get in, you got a shot. I mean, look at this year's NHL playoffs. You get in, you got a shot. The Wings are easily the closest just because of the fact that they're rebuilding properly. They're not stuck on a runaway freight train to nowhere, and they're not a team that can't get out of its own way.
How far down the horizon? How far down the road do you think that is?
4 years, 4 to 5 years before the Wings are truly Stanley Cup contenders. It's going to take some time to build it.
I agree. It definitely.
But I think you can argue.
You young enough where 4 or 5 years is not.
Right. I think you can argue though that 2 years from now they're at least in the playoffs because you've got those young guys turn into some seasoned vets. That they're not really seasoned, but vets at that point. They've got some experience under their belt, and you bring in more young talent. You add some veteran talent to go alongside it. You got yourself a chance to be a playoff team in a couple of years. And Stevie Y knows how to build it. 2-3 years down the road, I wouldn't be overly shocked to see him at least win a series. give it 3, 4, 5 years. Then if all things are built right, you could be looking at a Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah.
And a perennial Stanley Cup contender. The Tigers are bare minimum right now 4 years off from even making the playoffs.
So that's what I was going to ask you next. Is just kind of the reverse of that question is which of our 4 teams are you least optimistic about?
Honestly, the Tigers. And it's a pretty like the Red Wings are up here in terms of my optimism. The other 3 teams are down here.
Well, you can't really see it on the podcast.
I know. Like, let's just say there's a good.
There was
gap.
about a 3-inch separation.
There's a good gap there. There's a good gap there. The other 3 teams are. I'm not very optimistic about any of them.
Yeah.
The Pistons, I don't like the way they built things. There are certain parts of what they built that I like, and other parts that I just can't stand because you can't win that way.
Yeah.
The Lions are just eternal screw ups. I mean, what else? How else can I describe it? They eternally find a way to ruin it for themselves.
Yeah.
Whether it be by their fault or not. Whether it be by a picked up flag or a 10-second runoff or someone running out the back of the end zone. I mean, it's something always finds a way to cause the Lions to screw up. Something.
Yeah. And then the Pistons.
And honestly, after last season, I have no reason to believe that this team is going to be a 10-11 win team in that division of all divisions.
Yeah.
A healthy Rodgers with some weapons.
A lot better.
Another year of Mitch Trubisky with that defense, which I'll tell you right now, I actually think the Bears defense plays down this year compared to last. You don't. They forced a ton of.
It wouldn't be hard to do. I mean, that defense was amazing
theory.
last year.
It's the same theory I had about the Jacksonville Jaguars defense coming from the year prior to last year, and I was exactly right about it. They were not going to be as good. I had the same theory about the Bears, just not to that extreme. My God, nobody expected them to be that bad.
Yeah.
But the Vikings are also a really good team. Watch out for that Vikings team this year too, because you get Kirk Cousins not on his first year in a new system. Yikes. They might be scary.
Yeah. What is worrying about the Vikings is how much Adam Thielen got slowed down towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was due to any kind of injury or if...
I don't know.
Or teams start figuring him out.
I
don't know. But then the Pistons in general, they just kind of refuse to do a true rebuild. They just...
You blame the owner. I mean, going back to your ownership question, you can blame ownership for that. And you can honestly blame ownership for a lot of the situations.
That brings me back to my very first point here is do we need changes here? Now, half the teams are under the same ownership in the city with the Illiches.
True. And I'll be honest with you, as much as I love the Illich family and love what they've brought to, our sports cities and to certain ways to this city in particular, I don't know that Chris Illich is entirely bought into both of these teams. I don't know that Mike Illich was the baseball guy.
Yeah.
He's the one who wanted the Tigers. He's the one who was the baseball fan as a child. I'm not entirely sure that Chris Illich is, or the rest of the family is. I don't know that they're quite bought in to the Tigers as much as they are the Red Wings. I think the team and the franchise and the organization may actually be better served if the Illiches were to sell that team. I wouldn't be overly opposed to it. You got to get the right owner in, but I wouldn't hate the idea of them selling one of their 2 teams, probably the Tigers, because they just don't have the passion that Mike had that Mr. I had when it came to running that team.
Yeah.
When it came to running that organization, they just don't have the same passion. I'm fine with them sticking with the Red Wings. I like, again, I like the way that team has been rebuilt. I'd love to see Tom Gore sell the Pistons. I can't stand the way he's run that organization and his absolute outright refusal to do anything but continue to try for an 8 seed year in and year out. That drives me nuts.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
The guy has zero, and he just doesn't look good.
Yeah.
When he in public appearances, he looks terrible. He's either plastered out of his mind on the microphone, extremely awkward, or just making an ass out of himself.
I'm of the firm belief that to be a good owner, part of it is you need to have a good basketball mind. You can't just have all business senses.
Especially
Tom
if
Gorse is a great businessman. He has no basketball mind, though.
Not necessarily. Provided you refuse to meddle in the basketball decisions. He does. He vetoes trades of Andre Drummond. He says, go get me a superstar. That's meddling into basketball decisions for a guy that knows nothing about the freaking sport. That can't happen. You can be a purely business-minded owner and put the right basketball minds in place and stay out of that portion of it.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can win that way. Many owners have done
He's trying to be a Mark Cuban like owner without having the basketball knowledge of Mark Cuban.
He's trying to be an owner that has a connection rooted in fandom without even ever living in the city.
That's what I'm saying. He's trying to be a Mark Cuban like owner without knowing basketball like Mark Cuban does.
And also not even being a fan of the team.
Yeah.
The guy doesn't live here.
Yeah.
He's not from. I mean, he doesn't care about the city the way we do. He doesn't care about the team the way we do. It's his money. It's his bank. It's his ATM.
Yeah.
It's a business for him. It's a passion for us. There's a difference there. And that's one of the big reasons why this team is stuck in this eternal limbo of an 8 seed or worse.
So how much of this era of Detroit sports, basically the worst era of our lifetime in Detroit sports?
Oh, hands down the worst era of our lifetime. I mean, all I can remember as a kid is Wings' success. I mean, looking at the Forge, you've got to pin a lot of it on it.
Yeah.
There's one common denominator in
and
the
you were
lack
just
of
saying you feel the Ilges are disinterested.
and there's one common denominator in the lack of success of the Fords, and it's the lack of success of the Lions, and it's the Ford family.
Yeah.
It's the only thing you connected to. The Pistons, you can blame a lot of it on Tom Gores because in his outright refusal to do anything but fight for the playoffs. The Wings, you can definitely blame the Ilges for with their outright refusal to rebuild just so they can hit the 25 straight playoff years.
Yeah.
The Tigers, there's a little bit of, it could be lack of interest. It could be lack of passion. I blame more the Tiger situation on bad personnel decisions.
Yeah. The Ilches are the least of my concern. Like,
agreed.
Of the 3 owners that we have in the city, Chris Ilches,
agreed.
The least I'm worried about.
Agreed. 100% agree with that.
But I definitely go back to my original statement saying I think it is time for a change of scenery in terms of ownership in this.
Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to see a total fire sale of all of our teams. I want some stability here. But
every Detroit team for sale.
If there was one team, if there was one team I would like to see get sold in this city, it's the Pistons. Second would be the Tigers. Third would be the Lions. Fourth would be the Red Wings. That's it.
Okay. All right. Anything else to add before we move on to some summer movies?
Nah.
All right, let's run it. Okay, so we are on the precipice of Labor Day weekend. Labor Day weekend is this coming weekend.
We get a day off.
You guys may be
Are
listening
you
to
taking
this.
Friday off?
No. You guys may be listening to this on Labor Day weekend. I don't know. But Labor Day weekend traditionally kicks off summer movie season.
Right.
And it goes to Memorial Day weekend, and it goes to Labor Day weekend. So we figured what better time than to give you guys a little bit of a summer movie preview in the form of giving you guys our top 5 most anticipated summer movies for 2019.
Do I still have my list up? Because I did make a list here.
Yep.
I do not. I got rid of it.
We did. Yeah, we did do. If you guys have been tuning into our bi-weekly stream, twitch.tv/fanreport.
Get rid of it.
We did do a bit of a more extended, more long-winded summer movie preview where we
we went in.
Where we kind of went through and we talked about almost each movie coming out this summer. We did leave a couple off for the sake of time. But, yeah, we're just going to talk about our top 5 most anticipated and just see if you guys are agreeing with us on this. And there are, now, again, remember, there are going to be movies left off because of the fact that they don't count summer movies. There are movies that I'm anticipating more in 2019 in general than the movies we're going to talk about here, but the cutoff here is Labor Day. So, I think, are we going to make an exception for Id Chapter 2, by the way? Because I think that is, like, right on Labor Day weekend.
I was going to say, that's pretty much at the cutoff, isn't it? So I'd say, yeah, we can, I wouldn't consider that, I wouldn't consider that an exception. That's still technically part of summer movies, just the very end. It's the it's the finale.
So Labor Day is September 2nd. It's September 6th, unless they have early releases, but...
Okay. No, we'll include it in this because that's close enough. September's still summer.
Okay. With that being said, do to start off today.
You go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to start off from the bottom of this list, from number 5, and then we'll work my way up.
Okay.
So, my number 5 is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Now, this is a Guillermo del Toro produced adaptation of this trilogy of children's novels. Basically, there was was a collection of horror stories, of scary stories for children, but they were not quite for kids.
Right.
Mentally scarring. I think Nick and I, we both read them as kids. You may find them in your local library, but the illustrations on these in these books were part of what made them so terrifying. And looking at the trailers for this movie in particular, it looks like it nailed the spirit of those illustrations. But not to mention, and combine that with the fact that we're kind of starved for horror movies in general. We haven't had a truly scary horror movie in a long time. I mean, the last scary movie that really hit me was Hereditary, which was last summer. But before that, I believe it was It Chapter 2. I mean, the scary films have been few and far between. And Nick and I are both kind of horror movie junkies, so that you're going to see kind of a theme of my, at least with my list here, because there are a few quality, or what look like could be quality horror films coming out this summer, and Scary Stories is just one of them. So, yeah, so it's kind of a combination of my love for horror, my love for the source material, and not to mention, I forgot this point totally, not to mention Guillermo del Toro. I know he's not directing this, but the guy is a legitimately fantastic filmmaker, and he also has a great horror mind and he does mainly monster movies. He has shifted a little bit. He kind of did his last one was Shape of Water, which won best picture, and kind of mixed among some movie fans. I know it was very, very, very loved by critics. I personally love the movie, but in general, he has a great mind for horror, and he has a great vision. And speaking of vision, his visuals are kind of what's fantastic. I don't know how much of a hand he had in the actual making of the film in terms of the visuals and the scares, but just his guiding touch, I think, could really, really, really help this movie. So, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is definitely my number 5. I want to give you guys, I completely skipped some honorable mentions here, so I want to give you guys some quick honorable mentions. Hobbs and Shaw. Hobbs and Shaw is the spin-off to the Fast and Furious franchise, and it's starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham. Now they Detective Hobbs and Deckard Shaw, and basically it's almost like a buddy team-up where they fight against a villain played by Idris Elba, who, judging from the trailers, apparently has superpowers. Calls himself Black Superman. But these trailers have absolutely been bonkers, and especially the most recent one. I mean, you saw The Rock literally take down a Black Hawk helicopter with his bare hands. I know, not realistic. Fast and Furious has not been for the past 4 movies now, but this movie just looks like a pure adrenaline rush from start to finish. So I'm really looking forward to that. That one is an honorable mention for me. The other one that's an honorable mention, I actually ended up seeing this past weekend, and that's Rocket Man. Rocket Man's the Elton John biopic where Taron Egerton plays Elton John, and I'll tell you, that movie was fantastic, and I would definitely recommend, highly, highly recommend checking out Rocket Man. So those, and then those are my 2 honorable mentions. Really, my number 4 is another horror film, and It Chapter 2 was one of the scarier horror films we got in the last couple of years. One of the only good horror films we got in the last couple of years. I mean, this year we got Pet Sematary, which I thought was disappointing. Us, very, very, very good movie as a horror film. No, it wasn't scary. We've been starved for legit scares, and they released the first trailer not too long ago for It Chapter 2. Pennywise disguised as a grandmother, or some messed up grandma with some connection to Pennywise. But the tension in that trailer, in that scene in that trailer, was unbelievable. You could it's a generic saying here, but you could literally cut that tension with a knife. It's a continuation of probably what's been my favorite horror film. Not my favorite, because Hereditary is my favorite horror film, but what's been one of my favorite horror films of the past few years, and one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations, period, besides The Shining. So It Chapter 2, sticking with that horror film theme, that's my number 4. It's another one that I'm really, really looking forward to, and I'm hoping could be extremely scary, provide for some really good scares. We just got Nick back.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Nick, I just gave a couple other mentions, and my number 5 and 4.
Well then,
what about you? Do you have?
So honorable mentions would be.
I forgot about a couple honorable mentions. The two Disney live action films coming out, Lion King and Aladdin.
So one of my honorable mentions is Aladdin.
Toy Story 4. Sorry.
Another one of my honorable mentions is Toy Story 4. Is Aladdin technically in summer movies? Or is that still spring movies?
That comes out this coming weekend, I think, Memorial Day weekend.
Okay, so it does count. Another honorable mention would be Spider-Man Homecoming. Or not Homecoming, Far From Home.
Only one honorable mention.
Yeah. The reason being that the biggest reason I would see Spider-Man Far From Home, well, one of the bigger reasons I would see Spider-Man Far From Home is because of what I've invested in the other movies. Also, the reason I put it down as an honorable mention is because of the fact that I believe we've already reached our culmination in this series. So we're only going to see a steady decline here. That and Spider-Man Homecoming is not even inside my top 10 in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in terms of the MCU. So I'm not as excited about this movie as I could be.
Okay.
So, and these other movies that are in my top 5, I would say I'm a lot more excited about.
Fair enough.
So with that being said, my another honorable mention would be John Wick 3, which I've already seen. Rocket Man, which I've already seen.
Yeah, we talked about both of those. Well, I talked about both of those. But
another one would also be that new Bill Murray movie coming out, the zombie one. Oh, what's that?
Oh, The Dead Don't Die. The Jim
Dead Don't Die.
Jarmusch
Yes,
directed
yes.
Dead
That
Don't
movie
Die.
just looks like it's going to be
Bill
absolutely
Murray,
hilarious.
Adam Driver. Selena
I would
Gomez.
love to put that in my top 5. I just don't think it's going to be that great of a film. It just looks highly entertaining.
Yeah.
So with that being said, my number 5 is going to be Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yep.
I know that was your number 5 as well. So, but again, as Andrew mentioned, it's more of like a nostalgia feel here. I've been starving for really good horror. We get really good classic horror almost every year in terms of The Witch, Hereditary, but
You remind me of something. Continue.
we don't get a lot of really good modern horror. And I hope that Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is going to give us that. I have a lot of belief that Guillermo del Toro, as the producer, is going to have his hand in this movie and make it as good as it possibly can be. I have a lot of attachment to these stories. I read the book growing up, or read the short stories growing up, and I just remember enjoying that a lot. And and from what I've seen with the trailers, it looks like it's going to be really good. So my number 4. My number 4 is going to be Lion King.
Okay.
I have, I mentioned this, the nostalgia
It's
factor.
not I'll mention because you said it. And,
No, I said Aladdin, Toy Story 4 were my 2 honorable mentions from the Disney ones. Lion King number 4, and I mentioned the nostalgia aspect from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. You can literally tenfold that with Lion King.
Yep.
I've probably seen the animated version of Lion King about over 150 to 200 times.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I could probably...
I used to legit watch that once a day.
As a probably twice a day. As a kid, I could recite the entire script.
I could probably still do it.
I probably could too. I mean, there's just an absolute deep connection here in terms of my childhood and this movie. And from what I've seen with the trailers, looks like it's going to be amazing.
Yep.
Nothing but incredible everything. I'm seriously excited about this movie in every way. So I really do think it's going to be the best. You know what? I'm calling it right now. It is going to be the best of the Disney live action films. My
It's not an extremely high bar. But
no, I know. Beauty and the Beast is pretty good.
Yeah, I like Beauty and the Beast. I like them more than most. But
but I guess let's go on into number 3 here.
Okay, my number 3 is one in your honorable mention, Spider-Man: Far From Home. Part of the reason I'm really looking forward to this, other than, and I'll get to just the general lore in a second, but the villain they have here, Mysterio, he's my favorite Spider-Man villain. So that alone had me on board right away. And then they got Jake Gyllenhaal playing him, which I think is a fantastic actor. So that aspect of it alone has it highly anticipated for me. But just to see, because after Endgame, and not giving any spoilers here, but after Endgame, you didn't get much of what was going to happen in the future of MCU. And
well, yeah, we got no post-credit scene.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you got little hints towards the end. We won't give any spoilers away, but you got some idea of some of the future of what's going to happen with the future.
But nothing definitive. You just have little hints. Now,
well, I mean, we did get definitive things, but they weren't related to how the story's going to go.
Spider-Man: Far From Home. Already from the trailer, you get some tidbits, and then you factor in that like Kevin Feige has already said that this movie, well, first of all, their announcements are going to come around this movie's release, or announcements for Phase 4, which makes me think that in general, they're going to have a lot of stuff for Phase 4 in this movie, including some probably really juicy post-credit scenes.
It's the close of Phase 3 and the opening of Phase 4. There's a reason to have excitement here.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the movie just because of what it is. It's Mysterio, it's my favorite Spider-Man film, but the implications it has in terms of the future of the MCU, I mean, that's huge for me.
Again, the reason I have it as an honorable mention, as opposed to not even being in the conversation for me, is because of the excitement I have for what's to come.
Yeah.
This is a culmination of Phase 3 going into Phase 4, so there is a lot banking on this movie. But a lot of my I can't really call them lackluster, but less excited feelings I have for this movie have a lot to do with the fact that I don't think Spider-Man Homecoming was all that amazing. Still a great film. I still rank it in the mid-80s.
I don't think it was amazing, but I really enjoyed it.
I still rank it in the mid-80s, but in terms of some of the rest of the film, especially recently, they're so much better than Spider-Man Homecoming that I can't really rank it that highly. So if we're going to get something along those same lines, I don't have as high of expectations for it. Yeah. But my number 3 film is going to be It Chapter 2.
Okay.
It Chapter 1 was amazing. It Chapter 1 was absolutely amazing. It gave me good modern horror finally. It was something that I've been starving for, that I very rarely get nowadays in terms of a modern style horror film. And when we talk about classic and modern horror, classic is very psychological. Classic is very background. It's not in your face.
Yeah, they didn't have the special effects that they'll have in today.
Right.
Like,
so they have to be smart with the way that they scare you. Versus nowadays you can get what's called cheap horror, and it's very in a lot of modern in your face horror, a lot of it is not done well and not smart about how they do it. So it's not earned. So it's cheap. So and most horror films that are made nowadays in terms of the modern horror genre are cheap. They're not good. Look at The Nun. Look at the recent Insidious movies. Look at, insert other horror movie here that came out within the last 15 years. I mean, there's tons of them. Pet Sematary. That was another one that was really lackluster. It Chapter 2 was a modern horror film, but It Chapter 1 did it right. Yeah. And from what I saw in the first trailer, I have nothing but high expectations for this film. It looks like it's going to be earned. Yeah. Looks like it's going to make me feel uneasy.
I mean, what I commented on was I love the mood, the atmosphere, the tension of that first trip, that scene they put in.
That's what I mean by the scares are earned.
Yeah.
If you're feeling on edge going into it, that's earned. That's deserved. Or if you don't expect it at all and it seems not out of place, like that type of stuff is really well done. Yep. In It Chapter 2, I expected to continue on with the success that It Chapter 1 had and give you some really well-timed and well-earned scares along with a great development, great story that It Chapter 1 provided as well. Yep. So I'm very excited about that movie as well. I really need good horror, man. Yeah. I need it.
Yeah, I told him me and you are kind of a little bit of horror junkies. But my number 2, sticking with horror, 3 of my 4 have been horror. Midsummer. Yes. This is Ari Aster's follow-up to Hereditary. And it was very much a psychological horror film. What's about earned scares? None of these scares are really in your face.
No.
And what I loved about
they made you uneasy.
What I loved about the scares they put in this movie is how cocky Ari Aster was with it. Like, he knew it was scary. He didn't try to do something extra to get you. Like, he knew, I'm just gonna put this here.
I'm gonna put this in the background. You'll see it. Yeah, like there's scenes where she crawls across the dark corner of the room, and you're like, oh god.
But there's no bang to accompany it. Like, he knows you'll catch it.
It's so very subtle and so brilliantly done.
He knows he doesn't need to do anything to fluff it. He knows.
And now he's bringing us his callback, his second movie here. So along the same realm.
Midsummer, from what I can tell, it revolves around this group of, I guess, young teenagers, adults,
older teenagers, young adults,
but
seemingly in the age range of 18 to 24.
Yeah, somewhere around there. But they go to this cult.
A festival.
Middle of field that's having this festival.
It looks like a festival of some sorts, like a flower festival.
Not really you expect from a horror film. It's very bright and almost creepily cheerful.
I have this as my number 2 film.
And then it interweaves just this random creepy imagery, like just flashes of it in the trailer. And it's just if the movie is anywhere as uneasy in the trailer, this one's going to be brilliant. And judging from what Ari Aster with Hereditary, I have no reason to expect otherwise. So that's why it's so high on my list.
So I also have this as my number 2 movie for the summer. Coincidentally, it is called Midsummer.
Yeah. And it comes out Midsummer.
You mentioned how this is such a unique film in terms of the horror genre because it is so bright. You mentioned the ballsiness of Ari Aster in Hereditary. He took that ballsiness and doubled it with this. Who's ever heard of a bright horror film? Not this guy.
He's doing nothing to try to add. He's just going for pure.
He's going unique. He's doing something different while using classic inspiration, and that's something that Ari Aster's done extremely well, and I hope to see him continue to do extremely well with Midsummer. The trailers definitely make you feel uneasy, from the score, from just the scenes, the imagery, the way it's shot, just every single aspect of the trailer really kept you on edge and made you wonder, okay, what's going to happen? What's this about? And he's kept us in the dark almost entirely, and while being bright as literally daylight. And the thing about this movie, and one thing that's so impressive about this movie, is he's straight up not only hiding from the dark, but straight up just refusing darkness at all in this film. He's putting it in a location in the middle of summer where it's never dark. That's taking ballsiness in a horror film to the utmost degree.
Yeah.
Zero darkness. That's insane to me. And
it's cocky.
It is.
He's like, I don't use extra stuff to get to scare you.
Exactly. That's how smart this man is and how unique he is with the way he makes his films. And I have nothing but extreme expectations for this. This movie could go down as one of the best horror movies ever in my mind.
I'm hoping. I don't want to go with too high of expectations.
I have extreme expectations for this film. There's so much that just blows my mind just going into it.
Yeah, exactly. Number 1.
I think it's. I think it's.
Should we say it at the same time?
Yeah, because I think it's safe to say that we have both the same. It's
3, 2, 1.
Once upon a time in Hollywood. Yes.
You jumped the gun for the countdown.
I know. I was excited.
This is one of 2 movies.
You
coming
dropped
out
the Tarantino bomb,
from
sir.
From all-time directors.
Quentin Tarantino's a madman.
I was saying you got one in Quentin Tarantino, then you got later this fall with Scorsese.
Yeah.
2 of my favorite directors, and Pacino's in both of them. So, but this movie also has Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Margot Robbie.
You got a hell of a cast in this movie.
You have a fantastic cast. And basically it is, Leonardo DiCaprio plays a struggling actor in Hollywood, Brad Pitt plays a stuntman, and they happen to be in 1960s Hollywood.
I'm sorry, but that's so perfect that they got 2 guys that look almost exactly alike. That'd be like getting Mark Wahlberg and Matt Damon to be one guy, an actor, and a stuntman. Like, come on.
But it takes place in 1960s Hollywood against the backdrop of the Sharon Tate, the Marilyn Manson murders, and they live across their neighbors with Sharon Tate apparently in the film. So it makes for something really interesting. Now,
make no mistake, this movie is most likely not going to be about the Manson murders. I do think it's going to affect the primary story, but it's not going to be about them.
Yeah, I think it's going to find its way in the narrative. But I think it's going to be a central focus.
It's going to affect the goings on and the happenings, but I do really believe, from what I've heard, that this movie is about these 2 struggling actors.
Yeah. But I will say Quentin Tarantino is one of the few directors left where you just attach his name to a movie as a director.
It's automatically good.
And it's automatically something I'm going to go see in theaters.
It's automatically good. Also.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy's got a long list of things that tell you this man's a genius. I mean, the Kill Bill movies, Pulp Fiction. I mean, what else?
You could argue
Django.
You could argue his worst movie,
Hateful Eight.
His 2 least loved movies by fans are. I don't because they're all fans of all of them, but I would probably say Jack Brown, Hateful Eight. You know, I'm a huge fan of Hateful Eight, but even those movies are both fantastic.
I mean, it's kind of saying a lot. Yeah. If your worst movie is probably Hateful Eight, even though that movie is fantastic. But, I mean, looking at what he's done.
Exactly.
Pulp Fiction goes down as one of the greatest ever made. Kill Bill, the 2 Kill Bills go down as 2 of the greatest ever made. Django Unchained is a fantastic, brilliant movie.
Reservoir
Dogs, another one that goes down as one of the greatest ever made. Inglourious Basterds is a great, his revisionist history film. I mean,
speaking of revisionist history,
genius.
do you think revisionist history comes into play at all in this movie?
100%. 100%. Tarantino does revisionist history.
Do you think it's
so
going to
well.
end with like someone killing Marilyn Manson or something?
Marilyn Manson.
Wow, sorry.
Marilyn Manson. And the singer's dead.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Charles Manson. Sorry to all you Marilyn Manson fans out there.
No, I mean, very possible. I do think there is some revisionist history here that's going to lead its way into a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's one thing to see. One thing that I love how Tarantino does his films is he makes things in such a close-knit, claustrophobic style throughout the entire film and builds and develops characters through dialogue alone and through imagery and scenery around them and through backstory. And he builds characters so incredibly well. I don't know if there's another director out there that builds characters the way he does.
I mean, Hateful and Reservoir Dogs both took place in mostly one room. Yeah. And one of those movies is 3 hours long.
Exactly. I mean, you're hard pressed to find another director that does character development as well as he does in today's day and age. He's the mastermind of it. And then all of a sudden, in dialogue. And then at about some portion of the movie, all hell breaks loose. Yeah. And I can't wait to see that. Like, where is the all hell breaks loose moment going to happen in this movie? Yeah, because every Tarantino film's got
all hell break loose moment is about as given as a twist in a Shyamalan movie.
Exactly. I love the way he does things, and I am so extremely excited about it because, one, the cast, out of this world. Out of this world. When's the last time we got DiCaprio?
DiCaprio teamed up with Tarantino, we got one of my favorite DiCaprio performances
in Django.
Candy.
Yeah. When's the last time we got DiCaprio, Pitt, Margot Robbie, and Pacino together in a film? I don't think it's ever happened, frankly.
But when's the last time we had Pitt and DiCaprio in general? Has that ever happened?
I don't know. Didn't it happen for... No, he wasn't in The Departed, was he? Pitt. No,
he produced it.
He did produce it, yes. So, I mean, technically, kind of, sort of. But, I mean, you've got a masterful cast with a masterful director. There's no reason to not be anything but extremely excited about this film. Extremely excited about this film. I think it's going to touch on political satire. I think it's going to touch on some of the darkness that Hollywood is. I think it's going to touch on some revisionist history. I think you're looking at what could be one of the more well-written, well-directed movies of our decade.
Well, they did technically the audition. I don't know if you ever saw the Martin Scorsese short with Leonardo DiCaprio, Rob De Niro. I think Al Pacino's in it too.
Could you imagine, like, if you're
it's like De Niro and DiCaprio competing for the same role in the Martin Scorsese movie, and then he cast Brad Pitt instead. It's a great short.
But Scorsese's probably the only director that can go to names like that and say, "Hey, I want you guys to star in a short for me." Yeah. Most actors of that range would just be like, "Get the hell out of here." Yeah. But no, not Scorsese.
But he is great. I mean, he has good relationships with De Niro and DiCaprio, so that really,
he does.
Has that going for him.
But
yeah.
Obviously, he has one with Brad Pitt too. But
now I'm thinking is Brad Pitt done a Martin Scorsese? He's produced
he produced The Departed.
I don't think he's ever actually starred in a Martin Scorsese movie.
That's a good question.
About it.
Guess we'll have to find that out.
I don't think he has. But anyway, yeah. Any other things to add on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or do you have any other summer movies you just want to mention?
No, I think that just about covers it. I mean, I do really want to see Dead Don't Die. That looks like it's just going to be a great time. Zombieland 2 is another one I really am looking forward to.
It's October, I think.
Oh, it's October? Oh, yeah. I thought it was summer. Okay.
Well, I know Good Boys is one for me.
Good Boys is another one that looks like it's going to be fun.
We didn't mention any comedies, and that's probably the only summer comedy that I'm looking for. I mean, we already saw
Booksmart, which I didn't entirely love. Thought it was just two different movies, and one was good, one was bad.
So there is one horror movie that we didn't mention that I know both you and I are looking forward to. I don't think it's in either of our top fives, even upon mentioning, but Annabelle Comes Home.
Yes,
because I know how much you and I both enjoy the Conjuring universe,
and not so much the first Annabelle movie, but Annabelle Creations was fantastic. Yeah. I'm excited. Wow, hello.
Yeah,
I'm excited about it. I wouldn't put it in my top 5 or even in my honorable mentions. I mean, the class of movies that are in there are obviously much higher. I mean, you are kind of going back to the modern versus classic horror debate there. You are kind of very, very closely bordering on some cheap horror in terms of the Annabelle movies. I mean, the first one
it bums me because
especially.
it feels like that's where the Conjuring universe has been going, like with the Nun and
Yeah, which is really disappointing because in terms of the Conjuring movies, especially the first one in particular,
and
it was so well done. It was such a good mix between modern and classic horror to give you a modern horror film that was just fantastic and just wonderfully done. Not just cheap scares or anything like that. It was just a really well-made movie. And it was just something you don't normally get with modern horror films in particular. But
I'm going to do this one final twist on you before we throw in a little wrench in here.
Ooh.
Before we close this out. Of the movies you picked in your top 5, which do you think has the biggest potential to disappoint?
to disappoint, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Not everything Guillermo del Toro is involved in is fantastic. I think there's least familiarity with the story here. I think there is also a potential for a lot of convolution in this film with the many different stories. I don't know if they're doing different vignettes. I don't know if they're doing. I don't know how they're doing the stories here.
Yeah. Not to mention the director is someone we're not as familiar with. I mean, he did The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I haven't seen, but I remember seeing the trailer. I remember wanting to see, and I've heard it's actually a really good movie. But other than that, we really have nothing for him.
There's just a lot of potential for this movie to not be as good as we hope. And it just lends to what a lot of horror movies are nowadays, depending on how it goes. And is it cheap or is it well earned? And that's something that's a lot of people don't. I mean, obviously, you never plan to give you cheap horror unless it's done on purpose. You hope that it's well earned and just ends up not being that way. So I think that one is one. The other one I'm honestly going to say is going to be Lion King.
Really?
And not because I think it's going. There's a big possibility that it's not going to be a good movie. I think it's because.
Well, I don't give any of these a big possibility at all. I'm leaning towards these are going to be fantastic.
I think the biggest possibility of a negative in terms of Lion King is it pales in comparison to the original. And that's kind of been a very common theme with a lot of these live action films, and why they've gotten a lot of negative publicity.
From what we've seen from the trailer, though, I mean, I know they're leaving a couple of songs out. I know Be Prepared's not going to be in it, but in general, in terms of narrative,
it looks very similar.
Yeah, it looks like it's almost shot for shot,
right?
So, which
but
is
you
what
still could
honestly,
have.
When it comes to Lion King, keep it shot for shot.
I would agree with you. It does. I mean, there is still possibilities
like
there for
it. A movie like Mulan, you can stray a little bit.
Absolutely.
Like.
I still hope they bring in the musical aspects of Mulan. I know they've said that they're going to bring at least some of it back. I want a lot of it back.
And they said they will, and then so I don't.
But in terms of this movie, there is still some room for them to not be as good as the original, and that's where I would say the possibility for not necessarily failure, but for some bad response to come from. So that's a little bit of a. If you want to call it a dark horse in that realm for me. But that's all I have.
Yeah. And I'll agree with you on Scary Stories. And then if I had to pick a second one for my top 5.
Could you kind of argue the same about Spider-Man Far From Home in terms of just not being as good as it's what came before?
Well, what I would argue is expectations. It could, because coming off
Endgame, where the bar is set so high.
Yeah, your MCU, you're on a high with the MCU, so it could.
I'm actually lowering my expectations for this movie because of Endgame. Yeah, because there's no way I expect any movie, especially a single character film,
not to mention the amount riding on it with what the future of the MCU.
Right. So. There's no way I expect this movie to be anywhere near as good as Endgame. Yeah. So I'm lowering the bar for that because of that alone. Yeah. Which may be a reason why I only have it as an honorable mention, is because I'm setting the bar lower. But I just don't. There's nothing in me that brings me to believe it'll be anywhere near as good as what came before it. So. All
right. That was our quick top 5 most anticipated summer movies, a.k.a. our summer movie preview. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes.
As I said in the middle of our summer movie preview, make sure you check out our show we do every Monday and Thursday, www.twitch.tv/TheFanReport.
You sound like you had problems getting that out.
I did, because I took it on the end of a breath. I started on the end of a breath. So I was like,
I hate when I do that. I realize I sometimes do that in the intro, and I'm like, But anyways, guys, thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. Big thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast. And check us out next week. Same time, same place. Even though the place doesn't really matter to you guys, it does to us. But anyways, guys, thank you again. Andrew, I thank you for joining me.
Well, you can consider their place Detroit Sports Podcast. Our place, our physical studio we're recording in. But so I guess place does matter for them.
I mean, technically, yeah, I guess it does. I mean, I guess it depends on where you get your downloads. I mean, there are multiple places to download it. But anyways, guys, thank you. Enjoy your week and weekend, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Peace.